When did Obama defy the Supreme Court on immigration? He didn't. When did he defy lower court judges? He didn't. Joe Biden didn't either. So we're talking about the courts here, right? Judges, Trump-appointed judges, Piers. A Trump-appointed judge said earlier this year that an American child was expelled, deported from this country, even though you can't legally deport an American citizen, but was kidnapped and taken out of this country without meaningful process. That is the words.
In this video, we're going to watch Mehdi Hasan completely dismantle Piers Morgan as they clash over Donald Trump's immigration policies and the growing authoritarian streak in the United States. We'll let the exchange play out in full first, and then I'll break down exactly what stood out to me once it's finished.
There's a difference between being far right and a fascist. Do you accept that?
I mean, unfortunately, right now, it's all very grey in the United States.
But I would say that's part of the problem, is that because in the last few years, everyone has casually tossed around phrases like fascist, Nazi, etc., it kind of diminishes the reality when you see it, when they clearly are. Like, if you see an actual Nazi and you remember what the Nazis did, or you remember what the fascists did, actual fascists doing actual fascist stuff on a mass scale. The reason I've always quibbled with you using that word for Trump, for example, is that I just think it trivializes what actual fascism really is. When I saw these kids, though, what I'm seeing is a complete breakdown in any historical knowledge to brazenly admit I am a fascist. You never mind the open racism you had to put up with, which was obviously contemptible, but to just casually admit in a sort of cheery way, I'm a fascist, it just said to me they don't understand what that means.
Maybe, I mean, or that they do understand what it means and they like it. And this is the slight problem. All of the polling shows, Piers, that the Republican base has become more authoritarian over the last 5-10 years, has become more open to strongman rule, do call Donald Trump daddy because they like the idea of a strong leader, have told pollsters time and again that they're happy for Trump to ignore court rulings and ignore Congress and take more power for himself, which he's done, by the way. He has defied court orders, has defied the Supreme Court. And look, we can argue back and forth about the word fascist, just like on Gaza, you and I have argued about the word genocide. What we can't argue about, and surely what you cannot deny, is that America right now is going through an authoritarian moment. Most political scientists and scholars of democracy are saying American democracy is in decline, is going backwards, is regressing. We are seeing a much more authoritarian approach to government. The Republican Party is enabling Donald Trump's worst excesses. Again, call them whatever you want, authoritarian, illiberal, fascist. And these kids, quote unquote, they're all adults, but yes, young Americans, sitting in that warehouse with me, I don't think they're just ignorant. I actually do think they're taking their cues from the top. They are saying this stuff because Donald Trump has emboldened them. These views, Piers, as you well know, you lived in the United States, these views have been around for decades. But they were said in private. They were said in people's homes. They were said on some weird internet message board. They've become emboldened to say this stuff out loud because the leader of the country says similar stuff out loud. When they say to me, I'm not a real American, I should be deported, denaturalized. I mean, Donald Trump, Piers, is openly saying that Zohran Mamdani, the Muslim American citizen candidate for mayor of New York, is maybe here illegally. Maybe we have to investigate his citizenship based on nothing. They sat at the RNC and held up placards saying mass deportations now. They didn't just mean quote-unquote illegal immigrants, Piers. That's become very clear.
No, but you know what's interesting is I interviewed Joy Reid the other day, right, who was obviously at MSNBC for a long time, and she started ranting away about Trump and the deportation stuff that's going on. I just said to her, okay, how many people did Obama deport?
Okay.
No, you know it's one of my favourite questions. But what was striking was not just that she had no idea, which she admitted. She'd never bothered to find out, even though people like me had been telling everyone the number for a long time, to expose, actually, I think, a liberal double standard on this. But secondly, she said, I don't care. She didn't care how many people Obama had deported, even though he's by far pro rata the biggest deporter of people in American presidential history. So, you know, my question for you about this would be, okay, I don't happen to think Trump has been that authoritarian. I think he pushes the courts as hard as he can.
Why?
But then he reigns back.
He's defied court
orders. The people that have been deported, where there was a big blow up and contention about it, they've come back and they're facing due process. That's not what an authoritarian does. He's cleaned up.
That's just not true, Peter.
Well, on the southern border, for example, I presume you would praise Trump for stemming the number of people coming illegally there, or would you not?
No, I don't praise somebody who tortures people in detention centres, and I don't think you should either. And you said a lot of things that weren't true. With regard to Joy Reid, who's a good friend of mine, I believe that what she meant, I'll tell you in a second. Let me just deal with Joy Reid. I believe Joy was talking about not caring because it's not relevant. I mean, Joy can speak for herself, but that's my interpretation of what she said. It's not relevant. Obama, first of all, and you tried this gotcha on me, I've written pieces in The Guardian attacking Obama's deportation record. It was a very bad record. And I've been critical of Joe Biden's immigration record. I was on MSNBC attacking Joe Biden's immigration record for being too Republican-esque. But that is not relevant to right now, because when we're talking about deportations, we're not just talking about numbers at the southern border. We're talking about what ICE is doing in what's called the interior of America, in LA, on the streets of New York, grabbing people off the streets, masked agents with no badges, no IDs, unmarked cars, grabbing American citizens, doing racial profiling of Latino gardeners or customers at Home Depot, putting them in detention, disappearing them like fascist countries do. When American citizens, veterans, a disabled veteran in LA, Piers, just disappeared off the street for 3 days. His family don't know where he's in. That is Pinochet Chile style.
But do you
stuff,
agree?
Right? I'm not saying
Mehdi,
it's the same, but I'm saying that is reminiscent. Okay. No, hold on, Piers. You had a long thing about, I just need to deal with your points, and you come back in. Okay. He has defied court orders. The Washington Post just did a study the other day of 160 lawsuits brought against him. They've defied 1 in 3 of those lawsuits. He hasn't given due process to people in El Salvador. People were tortured, Piers, in El Salvador. Kilmar Abrego Garcia talks about being sat on his knees all night long, being beaten, being deprived of food.
Well, actually, a lot of people have said that's nonsense.
I did. You oppose George Bush. But it's not nonsense. People have, what are you talking about? Congress members have gone to Alligator Alcatraz in Florida and talked about 35 people to a room, drinking water out of the toilets that they have to do a number 2 in. You opposed the Iraq war. I assume you opposed Guantanamo and Abu Ghraib at the time. I don't quite remember. But this is torture. This is what Trump, the guy you say is not authoritarian, is doing. And he's doing it to American citizens.
Yeah,
he's doing it to American. Well, he's not giving due process to American citizens. He's chucked out American children out of this country.
Right, let me get a question
due process just earlier this year.
Let me get a question in. Do you agree that undocumented immigrants in America who then commit a crime should be deported?
Yes.
Good. So then we got a bit of agreement on that. Do you agree that reducing the number of people coming over the southern border illegally from the many millions, depending what you want to report, you want to believe, 8 to 12 million is reported to have come over in the Biden administration 4 years? Do you agree that reducing
that... It's not 8
that...
to 12 million, that's a bullshit. That's a nonsense number.
Well, how many do you think it is?
2 to 4 million.
How many?
I think it's about 2 to 4 million is what the experts I talk to say 2 to 4 million.
Okay, so millions. Do you accept that reducing that to just a few thousand a month is a good thing?
Not if it ends the right to asylum, which is America's right under America's obligation, apologies, under international law and American law. Donald Trump. No, hold on, Piers. You can't just elide that. Donald Trump has ended the right to asylum effectively in this country. That is outrageous. It is illegal.
But he hasn't, though, has he?
Do you support ending the right to asylum?
No,
he has. He has actually. He's ended the right to asylum.
You can still claim asylum.
No, that's not true, Piers.
You can.
That's not true. That is
not true. You can still claim asylum in the United States.
ICE agents are picking up. Piers, no. In fact, not only can you not claim asylum at the southern border, you're being rejected, but people in the middle of asylum hearings in courtrooms in America, on camera, are being grabbed in the middle of their asylum hearings by ICE officers. Judges are calling this out, Piers, and I assume, again, you support a right to asylum as a British citizen.
I do.
The UK, the US, every developed country
I do,
supports
but I also...
a right to asylum. Donald Trump has ended that. And by the way, Stephen Miller is openly opposed to that. So there's no point defending people who don't want you to defend them.
I'm not defending anybody.
They're openly opposed to this.
I'm about to tell you that I think that I think the fact that we both agree...
You just told me to praise Trump's record at the border.
Look, I think
Trump's horrific record.
I think if Trump had stuck to deporting people who committed crimes when they're undocumented in the United States, that would have had widespread approval. I do not like...
which every president
I do not like this chilling sense of fear that everyone undocumented in America currently has because of the extraordinary work they do for the US economy. Never mind anything else. Never mind the humanity.
Not just undocumented, Piers. What about the legal? Hold on, not just undocumented. What about legal immigrants? He's detained green card holders. He's going after American citizens.
I don't think it's right.
They've set up a committee.
I don't think it's right.
So, you don't think it's right? Do you think it's authoritarian? You're not worried about the direction of travel in the US, where 2/3 of Republicans basically identify as authoritarians?
I think
where a majority of Republicans tell pollsters we think Trump shouldn't follow the courts or Congress.
I think,
you're not worried by that?
Well, of course he should follow courts, but I think that in relation to the immigration issue, that the vast majority of Americans I've seen interviewed, right? Doesn't necessarily mean that is the majority of the country. But most people think if you're in the country illegally, that isn't something to be applauded. I know that when I wanted to go to America and get a home there, which I have, and work in America, I had to go through a laborious, quite painstaking, quite expensive process of getting a visa, for example, right? That is the normal way people operate in other countries. So that is how a lot of people do it. They do it the legal way. We have the same issue in the United Kingdom with people coming over on boats from France in the tens of thousands, right? It is annoying to those who do things the right way. So I understand that, but I also understand you cannot just deport every undocumented person in America. It would create complete mayhem. It would wreck the economy. It's unworkable, and it's also intrinsically unfair if someone's been there for a few years, has family born in the United States, is working and paying taxes and contributing to the economy. I think it's not right that those people should be picked up and thrown out. Right? No. So there are lots of complexities to this, and I agree with a lot of it, probably along with you. I just don't think that you can ignore, as Joy Reid wanted to, what Obama did for 8 years as a Democrat president and as a black and as the first black president.
Piers, come on, Piers. I get that you need to do this both sides shtick for your show, but Obama is not relevant.
Shtick.
Obama did not defy the Supreme Court.
I actually do look at both sides.
Well, okay, point to me. Well, Piers, point to me then. I'll give you as long. I've got to go soon, but I'll give you as long as you want before I go. When did Obama defy the Supreme Court on immigration? He didn't. When did he defy lower court judges? He didn't. Joe Biden didn't either. So we're talking about the courts here, right? Judges, Trump-appointed judges, Piers. A Trump-appointed judge said earlier this year that an American child was expelled, deported from this country, even though you can't legally deport an American citizen, but was kidnapped and taken out of this country without meaningful process. That is the words of a Trump-appointed judge. You cannot find an equivalent for Barack Obama, and I carry no water for Obama on immigration. One thing I've got to say on undocumented folks, some of these people, not just here a few years, they picked up an Iranian woman, a grandmother in her front yard gardening, who'd been here since 1979. She came as a child. Her family claimed asylum after the Iranian Revolution. They picked up and detained her. This is insane. And by the way, the polls show, Piers, that Americans do want deportations, but when they're asked more detailed questions, do you support people who've been here for many years? Do you support people who've committed no crimes? Do you support deporting people who want a pathway to citizenship? They don't support deporting those people. They support, like you and I do, deporting violent criminals, which Biden was doing, Trump did, Obama did. Everyone agrees on that. What he's doing right now, what Stephen Miller is doing, Piers, just so your viewers know, Stephen Miller went to ICE and said, you better round up 3,000 people a day. He's given them an arbitrary number. And ICE people are saying, we can't do this. It's not possible. He said, just go to 7-Eleven, go to Home Depot, and just round people up. They're doing racial profiling, Piers. They're just grabbing brown people, Latino folks off the streets who are American citizens. And they're saying very clearly why they want to do this, right? They want to make, when they say they want to make America great again, it's because they want to go back to a whiter America, a less browner America. That is Stephen Miller's vision. That is, you get Stephen Miller on Piers and ask him.
They've not said that. They've not said that.
Stephen Miller is a white nationalist. Stephen Miller is a white nationalist who spent a career enabling and promoting white nationalism. It's all on the record.
But there is no evidence Donald Trump wants to keep people in because of their skin colour or throw them out because of their skin colour.
Actually, there's a lot of reporting from the first term where he says, why can't we have more people from Sweden, less people from shithole countries? So I'm pretty sure I know what he was talking about when he was talking about Swedish folks.
Well, he's probably talking about the 7 countries which Obama banned people from coming in from because of their terror record. Was he?
He didn't ban entire peoples from coming in. He
Actually,
put them on
he did.
A
That was the farce of that was the farce when Trump did it. The left all went nuts, and it turned out Obama had done exactly the same thing.
He didn't ban everyone from coming in. By the way, Donald Trump in December 2015 said we need to ban every Muslim coming into the United States. Do you support that Islamophobic, racist position?
He said, if I remember accurately what he said, it was after an appalling terror attack where I think over 50 people got murdered. And he said, we're going to have a short-term suspension on people coming in from the same countries that Obama had done this to.
No, he didn't.
Until
he said every Muslim. No, he said all Muslims will be banned. Not true, Piers. People can Google it right now. You're wrong and I'm right, as ever. He said all Muslims will be banned from coming into the United States. He didn't say anything about 7 countries. That's what it became when he came into office. But he said he wanted to ban all Muslims from coming in. Surely you disagree with that?
No, Mehdi, in the end, I always say with Trump, act on what he does, not what comes out of his mouth, right? You don't like that.
And I've been telling you, I've got to run, but I've been telling you for the last 20 minutes what he's been doing, and you partly agreed with me. But now at the end, because you've got to do the both sides stuff, you've got to defend
How
Trump.
many countries
You don't agree with picking up Latinos outside of Home Depot. Piers, you don't agree. You don't agree with picking people up outside Home Depot.
How many Muslim countries in the end did Trump ban people coming in from?
I think 5, if memory serves me correctly.
I think it was 7. The same 7 Obama had done. That's my point. You can't ignore history. You can't just pretend that Obama didn't do exactly the same thing.
Obama did not ban Muslims from coming into the US. He did not say Islam hates us. He did not say that. He did not tell Muslim members of Congress to go back to where they came from. I remember when you came on my show, Piers, and I read out the quote to you, where he told the 4 members of the squad to go back to the countries they came from, and you would not call it a racist statement, but it was a racist statement. You know it, and I know it, and everyone watching knows it.
Mehdi,
and everything they said to me on Jubilee, by the way, is stuff that Trump has said, or a version of.
It's not. I think...
I'm going to stop it right there. I could keep playing this clip, but honestly, there's no need, because the point is already crystal clear, and it needs to be addressed directly. Piers Morgan, at times, comes across as a complete hack. It's genuinely uncomfortable, watching how far he's willing to contort himself to shield Donald Trump and the modern right. The discussion is meant to be about Trump, authoritarianism, and the rise of far-right thinking, including the guy on Jubilee who openly called himself a fascist. Yet every time Mehdi Hasan lands a solid, evidence-based point, Piers immediately retreats to the same tired fallback, Barack Obama. And the reason he does that is simple. He can't actually counter what Mehdi is saying. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. In my view, Mehdi Hasan is one of the strongest debaters working today. People might not like his style. Some find him aggressive, others find him relentless. That's fine. But the reality is, he usually knows exactly what he's talking about, and he comes armed with facts. This isn't vibes-based arguing. He brings documentation, history, and receipts. And on this issue, he's absolutely right. Donald Trump didn't just stumble into this moment, he created it. He is the reason those people on Jubilee felt confident enough to openly embrace racist and fascistic views. He normalized it. He spent years using nationalist, authoritarian, us versus them rhetoric. The exact kind of language historians consistently warn us about. Scholars have compared Trump's behavior, his language, and his attempts to undermine democratic norms, including the events surrounding January 6th, to classic authoritarian and fascist power grabs. So when Mehdi says these people feel emboldened because of Trump, that's not a stretch. That's a logical conclusion backed by evidence. Look at Trump's first term. Look at his immigration policies. Policies Mehdi referenced clearly in this discussion. Piers tries to dodge those realities with whataboutism, but it doesn't work. Trump's immigration bans explicitly targeted specific ethnic and religious groups. That's not accidental. That's discriminatory by design. He consistently dehumanized immigrants, used racist language, and fueled fear and resentment. And we're still seeing the effects of that today, as anti-immigrant sentiment continues to rise, and white supremacist ideologies feel increasingly comfortable operating in the open. And let's be honest about something else. When Trump says, "Make America great again," what do you think he means? For a lot of his supporters, it's about turning the clock back to a whiter, more exclusionary version of America. That's the message many of these extremists hear loud and clear. That's why the people Mehdi confronted felt so confident expressing those views, because they believe they're echoing the values of the man at the top. So yeah, this was an absolute schooling. Mehdi Hasan didn't just out-argue Piers Morgan, he dismantled the narrative completely. Let me know what you think about this exchange in the comments below. And while you're down there, hit subscribe and give the video a thumbs up. I appreciate you, and I'll see you in the next one.